Story number 1. The Ebbing Dead. We set up our tents just above the tree line, where a lengthy stretch of deserted beach met the thick coastal forest. The signs were clear. "Do not stay after dark," written in weather-worn lettering on a bleached wooden post. Warning of dangerous tides and no trespassing. However, that outdated post only added to the excitement of the situation because we were 5 careless buddies in our 20s. Danny came up with the notion of sea beach camping on the most isolated section of the northern coast, where people spoke in half-sentences and with wide eyes. Something about individuals being stolen by the tides. Shapes in the fog, something. However, we were unbeatable since we carried firewood, alcohol, and positive energy. It was paradise by day. Not a soul in sight. The sky was gloomy and low, but not dangerous. The tide, far away and strangely quiet. We drank, played cards, and laughed too loudly for the crows perched on the tree branches to hear us during the day. Rachel was the only one who did not seem right. Her fingers twitched near her necklace as if she wanted to murmur a prayer, and she continued to look at the sea. The mist came in too early that evening. Like something creeping on 1,000 invisible limbs, it came in low to the sand, thick and swift. It turned the firelight into a drab orange blob and extinguished the stars. They swallowed the sound. The waves were now hardly audible. Only the crackling of the fire and the sound of the wind rustling the tent canvas. We heard the screams at midnight. There were no howling animals or crashing branches to begin with. Just a human cry, piercing the dense fog, far away yet clearly urgent. We stopped. Every one of us. Do not make jokes. Do not laugh. Just holding my breath and straining my ears. One more scream, this time closer. Additionally, there were squeaky footsteps that sounded like someone dragging themselves across damp sand. We had a disagreement. Perhaps there was trouble for someone. A boat might have crashed. Perhaps we ought to assist. However, something instinctive told me not to go to the sea. Not right now. Not in this place. Before we could stop him, Danny, ever the valiant fool, took a torch and disappeared into the fog. Like a sword, his beam sliced through the haze, but in a matter of seconds he was engulfed. His footsteps grew softer. The yelling ceased. Then there was quiet. It was 10 minutes, 20 perhaps. Then we heard a return sound. Footsteps. Not Danny's, though. It did not walk properly, whatever it was. The pace seemed sluggish, a kind of dragging, damp echo. Then we noticed it, a silhouette in the fog. Not right, but human-sized. One side of the head is tilted. Excessively lengthy, seemingly stretched legs. The skin appeared wet and pallid. Rotten. Just at the limit of the firelight, it stopped. "Danny," Rachel muttered. It lurched in the direction of her voice. Came into sight. It was wearing Danny's clothing, which was drenched and torn, but its face was not his. It was blue, bloated, and barnacle-covered. Its head was covered in seaweed. Its seawater gushed from its lips, cascading down its chest like a fountain, as it opened far too wide. A second later, the smell reached us. Rot, salt, and something older. A dead object. We took off running. I do not recall yelling. Story number 2. The waterline of red. At 3:17 a.m., the water withdrew, revealing a lengthy, dark scar in the sand of the beach. At first, none of us noticed. After drinking and joking till after midnight, we were partly asleep in our tents. However, a sound outside the tent walls that sounded like labored breathing roused me. Not the wind, not waves. As if the beach itself had lungs, it breathed deeply and slowly. The flap was unzipped by me. The moon has disappeared. Without any stars or clouds, the sky had turned to charcoal, leaving only a flat, limitless blackness. The fire that we had constructed just hours before was extinguished. On the horizon, however, I could see the waterline, or what should have been the waterline, sitting much too low and farther than it should ever go. And a line of red was traced in the damp sand where the sea had receded. Not seaweed, not garbage. A flawless arc of slippery, red liquid that glistened in my headlamp's dim light, as if blood had been used to draw the new limit of the sea. Someone stirred behind me. Ben. Alina was there, drowsy. Are you all right? Before I could explain why, I shushed her. I did not want to be heard by the creature I had not yet seen. Since the breathing had continued, I looked around the shadows. Movement was detected by my beam near the water. Shapes. No, more than 6 of them. 10? They did not move. They were not even able to crawl. They squirmed. Slick and pale, like eels with shattered human parts. The objects glided without rising from the ground, backlit by the departing sheen of the water. For a moment, one of them sprang up. I can see its face plenty. No eyes. Only sockets. Additionally, it had an open mouth with many needle-like teeth that were excessively widely spread, as if it had evolved to swallow whole. The whispering began at that point. It sounded like wind at first, but then the pitch changed strangely, creating what sounded nearly like words. Dozens of people talking simultaneously, but jumbled underwater. I crouched next to Alina, who had become still, and backed into the tent, pulling the flap down. She muttered, not to me, "They are back. This is what I dreamed of." I did not inquire about her meaning. I was immobile. Now the rumors were circling us, encircling the tent. I heard a wet, slapping sound, like a dying fish, as something dragged itself across the nylon wall. Then the laughter started. The sound of a youngster laughing in reverse, as if it were being played backwards on an old cassette recorder. It began softly and increased in volume till I felt like screaming to block it out. The tent shook, as though something massive was moving beneath the sand. The ground below pulsed. Next, Jonah's tent tore open. His scream was barely audible before it was interrupted by a sound I cannot even explain. A moist folding that sounded like someone crumpling a carcass composed of cartilage and meat. With its beam spinning crazily, his torch rolled into view, capturing glimpses of hands without fingers, limbs bent incorrectly, and a mouth that split vertically down a body's chest. Alina took hold of my wrist. She said, "The cue. We stay inside the red waterline. That is their desire. To get you to step over it, they sketch it." I glanced down. 30 feet? The red line was getting closer now. 20? It was heading inland as if the sea were using bait to draw us in. Story number 3. Below the dark sand, on the darker part of the beach, where the sand turned nearly black and felt odd underfoot like glass smashed into powder, we set up the campfire. Due to years of erosion and unfinished stories, the surrounding village of Hollow Shore had long since been abandoned. The beach was still there, bare and uninhabited, and the only way to get to it was via a trail so overgrown that it seemed if the land did not want it there. We were 6 in number. Rob, Tanya, Jules, Vash, Nikki, and me. We were going to say goodbye to college on this trip. We had sleeping bags, beer, music, a generator, and enough excitement to make us forget what people had been whispering about Hollow Shore. Disappearances, rituals. At night, a beach that swallows sound. We toasted the spirits, joked about it, and challenged one another to go swimming after dark. The dare was not taken. The ocean had stopped crashing by midnight. They had flattened the waves. The sound had completely vanished. Your heartbeat would be the only sound you could hear if you opened your ears wide. The wind had ceased to blow. It was not until the fire crackled too loudly, abnormally loud, amid a silence that should not have been so profound that I noticed it. Then came the humming. Low at first, barely above vibration, like the frequency of a buried engine. It came from the direction of the dunes, from where the sand turned completely black. Vash tilted his head. "That's not wind." Jules stood. "Subterranean resonance. It's real. Underground pockets. Gas or something." But his voice didn't sound convinced. The humming deepened, became a chord, as if dozens of voices or strings were tuning themselves beneath our feet. Tanya stood, took one step toward the dunes and stopped. Her face was slack, eyes open too wide. Rob called to her, but she didn't answer. Her lips started to move, though no words came out. Then her mouth opened, and sand began pouring out. Not spitting, not coughing, just falling. A steady stream of fine, black grains flowing from her throat like an hourglass turned sideways. She collapsed to her knees, choking, but the sand didn't stop. It spilled from her nostrils, from the corners of her eyes. We ran to her, screaming, but when we reached her body, her skin cracked, like clay drying too fast in the sun. One by one, pieces of her flaked off, revealing something beneath. Not bone, not blood, just more sand. And when her face crumbled, I swear I saw something move inside, just for a split second. Something long and wet and pale, like an eye on the end of a tendril, retreating into the core of her headless shell. We didn't scream. We didn't move. It shook and the sand that had been Tanya fell into a heap. Jules took a step back. That is no longer her. There is not even a body there. Rob snapped. He bolted for the vehicle. The fog had rolled in, but we had not noticed. It hugged the coastline and was low and thick, making it impossible to assess distance. As if he had walked behind a curtain, he disappeared into the mist. Not a sound. No answer. We cautiously followed, but Rob was not there. The sand was the cause. It beat. Shapes moved beneath the surface. I swear I saw a hand dragging through the grains without any resistance, upside down. Then another. A mandible. A half-formed face that was still blinking. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of bodies below us that are partially buried, shutting their eyes, a little twitching. Everyone is waiting. From the shore came a voice. From underneath, not in front of or behind. Where the sea forgot it was dead, you stand. Before we could get to Vash, the sand gave way beneath him. Instead of sinking like quicksand, it opened like a throat, engulfed him whole, and then closed once more. No blood. Do not yell. Just quiet. Nikki began to pray. Jules dug in. When I turned around, I noticed that there was not a single wave when the tide returned. Now it was simply an ideal mirror. At its edge, something was standing. It had a human-like form, just barely. It had barnacles and seaweed wrapped around its limbs. It had a large head that seemed to have grown longer over time. The mouth was excessively big. Its skin glistened as if it were dripping with oil. The sand underneath it literally turned gray, dead, and as dry as ash when it moved. One arm was raised, and the entire amount of sand below us burst skyward. Coughing and gasping, we were buried and flung like rag dolls. As if her bones had changed their minds, I dug out just in time to witness Nikki being pulled back, not by hands but by something beneath her flesh. She started to crawl toward the sea like a marionette with tangled lines after bending her arms incorrectly and arching her back. Once more, Jules dashed into the fog. In a matter of seconds, I lost him as I attempted to follow. I yelled his name. He returned the call. Avoid letting them in. They talk from within you. As soon as they enter your mind. He stopped talking. My own voice called back to me from the mist a moment later. Hey, come over here. I located the road. I was the one, just like me. Inflection, rhythm, and tone. I did not respond. Even though the humming was back, louder now and rattling my ribs, I ran in the opposite way, back toward the dunes. As though there were fissures in the fabric of space that revealed water behind the stars, the sky above split slightly, not with light but with depth. Buried behind the dunes was an old shack that I discovered after climbing in. I waited. The shack was surrounded by the murmuring. I heard wet skin squishing against the thin wood slats as something put its face against them. Then there was stillness once more. I bided my time until daybreak. The beach was quiet when I emerged. The tide is normal. No indication of difficulty. My friends are nowhere to be seen. By the afternoon, I had arrived at the ranger station. A crew was sent. No black sand was discovered. Just a typical beach. My anecdote made them laugh. Made notes. Submitted a report. Called my parents. However, I came back after 2 weeks. I went by myself. At midnight, I waited on the sand. Not a fire. Not a tent. It is only me and the growing darkness. And I realized the reality as the water swept back like a curtain. The sea does not give back what it takes. It reshapes it and buries it under the shore. Inhale into it. Assigns a new name to it. A fresh face. It will do the same to me one day. Not yet, though. Not until I reach the black line, where the sand starts to murmur, barefoot. Story number 4. The Remembering Tide. That night, the tide turned red. At first, we were unaware. The 6 of us had already set up camp on the upper dunes, which we believed to be a decent, safe distance from the waves. The sand was dry and smooth, with ancient driftwood scattered across it like bones that had washed up on the shore. Because of its notoriety, we had selected Cold Widow's Bay as our beach. Not a single cell service. No roads in the area. Not even a station for rangers. In some part of our minds, we found it amusing since it was totally alone. Since the disappearances, no one else had ventured to camp here. 5 years ago, 6 residents vanished overnight. They zipped off with their tents. The campfire remains toasty. The sand has no prints in it. No blood. Simply gone. But we had more courage. Or less intelligent. The air had become too calm by dusk. Now there were no more seagulls to screech and bother us as we were setting up. There was no longer any boiling foam or lapping waves in the sea. Just the sound of something far away rising. Something heavy but fluid, like gallons of liquid splashing against a wall that should not have it. As night struck, I strolled toward the beach's edge and noticed the tide, which had the color of diluted blood and was coming in softly and silently, as if it did not want to wake anyone. It was not algae. It was not runoff. The stench was of wet teeth and iron. "Hey, there is a problem with the water," I called back to the others. Our skeptic, Jem, yelled out, "It is only silt. You city dwellers are constantly afraid of the outdoors." I wanted to disagree, but then I saw the figures. A line of shapes stood shoulder deep in the deepest water, out beyond the tide. Dozens, perhaps more, not moving, completely still. No boats, not a rock, only heads, facing the coast. "Guys!" This time I screamed more loudly. Still huddled around the fire, they laughed. But even Jem fell silent when I pointed. For many minutes, we all watched the sea while the standing figures remained motionless and the red waves lapped closer. Then the lights came on. From the water, a faint, greenish, strange glow flowed upward beneath each person, resembling spotlights flashing from the ocean floor. The bodies were illuminated from below. Moreover, what we observed was not human. The legs were very lengthy. The arms dragged in the surf and hung abnormally low. The faces had holes where eyes should be, and gaping mouths that never closed. Around the necks of some were ropes. Some had seaweed woven into their skull cavities. They resembled drowned corpses. "Retrench," Jules said. "Now back up. They are awaiting." "For what purpose?" Nikki inquired. The tide responded. Together, the figures lunged forward with a sound like drained lungs.